My guest today is Tiffany Crum, author of the fiction novel This Story Might Save Your Life. She is coming for an appearance at the Hamilton East Library here in Fishers, April 18th from 6 to 8 p.m., and we'll talk more about that later. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I finished your book,
Oh,
and once I finished it the other day, my first thought was, how can this be your first novel? Because it's a page turner, and the way you develop the characters is amazing. The way you choose to reveal facts and information as you go along at just the right time, I think, is something that you would see in some of the best and most experienced novelists. So that I'll say is my comment. But with that in mind, let me ask the first question of you. What I am curious after reading it, what first sparked your idea? By the way, this is about a podcast of all things, since we're on a podcast. But
yes.
what first sparked your idea that this story might save your life? The name of your book. How did that evolve from what initial concept you might have had to a finished novel?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for your compliments. That means a lot. It is actually not the first novel I ever wrote. It is the first novel that has been published. So it was a long journey to get here, and in fact, I was writing literary fiction before. I thought that I wanted to be very, very serious and get myself on NPR someday and have a conversation with Terry Gross, and she would ask me intelligent questions, and I would have intelligent answers, and everyone would think I was very smart. And and instead, what I realized, after my third practice novel, was that I was writing not the books that I wanted to read. I was writing the books that I thought that I should be writing, of course. And so at the time that I started writing this book, I was reading a lot of thrillers and romances. And what I found was that I wanted more thrills in my romance and more romance in my thrillers. And, because of the literary training, some of that got sprinkled in as well. But it was such a joy to write. But the reason that I ended up writing about a podcast in particular was because I was also listening to a lot of podcasts at the time, and because I was just trying to just write about everything that I loved, just to make this the most enjoyable writing experience possible, just in case I once again did not sell a book. I at least wanted to have a lot of fun doing it, and so I ended up writing about a podcast that felt similar in its trajectory to fame to my favorite murder, which was my favorite podcast at the time. Just like, two girls who started off in their living room chatting about true crime, and then 10 years later have hundreds of millions of followers and 30 million downloads a month and a whole network. And, it was just fascinating to me to watch their trajectory to fame. So that was always a part of the book from day one.
Well, I'm sorry that I'm certainly I'm no Terry Gross, okay? So, but I appreciate the fact that you maybe, who knows, maybe someday you will get on that program. I love that show, by the way, Fresh Air on
Me
NPR.
too.
It is a great show, and she is a great interviewer. She's done this for a very long time. By the way, as part of the story, this man-woman friendship that spawns a podcast, they were offered $30 million. Nobody has offered me $30 million, so
No.
and I don't expect that to happen anytime soon. I do have a sponsor, and I'm very thankful for them, but I'm not making $30 million.
Yeah, they are the exception, which is why it's interesting to read about it, right?
Well, yeah, they just have, and it's interesting how sometimes that chemistry is there, and you just something takes off, and they certainly had that chemistry in the book that you wrote. Was there a particular moment? Because I could just tell by reading the book you were enjoying telling the story.
Yes.
It just jumps off the page. But was there a point in time when you were writing this that you thought, hey, this story is really starting to work?
I honestly felt that way from day one. It's so funny because all of the practice books that I wrote were such a slog. It was it would take me a whole year to do a draft and then a whole year to revise another draft. And of course, I was working part-time and raising kids and all of that at the same time. But I just assumed that the writing process was always going to be very slow for me. And when I started this book, I was just literally in love with every single page of the book from day one. And it only took me 6 weeks to draft it because I just needed to see their story through, and I loved those characters so much I wanted to spend every minute of the day with them. So I just felt like if there was that much love that could be poured into the book, it had to be something, I just felt right. It felt like this was going to be the one, and I was right. It
Well,
worked out.
now again, the name of the book is "This Story Might Save Your Life." So I have to ask this question: what does saving your life mean in the context of this story?
Oh gosh. Well, okay. So the title is also the title of their podcast, which is about survival stories. And the way that the podcast is run is that one person does a whole lot of research on a life threatening topic and presents it to the other who has done absolutely no research on that topic. And the other has to then spitball ways to survive said scenario. So it's a lot of fun. It's like a comedy podcast. It's silly, but also because the book is about someone who goes missing. And my actual pitch for the book is, two best friends who host a wildly popular comedy survival podcast, and what happens when one goes missing and the other is suspected of murder. So it's a survival story of their own, and what they learn throughout the book, and what Benny learns as he's searching for Joy. It's not a spoiler that Joy goes missing. What Benny learns as he's searching for Joy is that the information that he uncovers could potentially save her life.
Well, it's like a mystery. I won't say it's a murder
Yeah,
mystery, but it's a missing person mystery for sure.
yeah.
And you do keep us on edge. And Benny is constantly looking for clues. And by the way, one of the cliffhangers in the whole book is how do you survive the mouth of a whale? So
Yes.
I'll leave that for the reader to read more about that. But that was that's something you get at the very beginning of the book, and you don't get the answer until the very near the very end. So you know. But one interesting aspect of this book for me is the fact that it's about a man and a woman who form this very close relationship, this friendship that friendship that they develop, each of them get married, and how that friendship impacts their respective marriages. That's a big part of the story, isn't it?
Absolutely. It has very much a When Harry Met Sally vibe to it. Can a man and woman ever really be best friends?
Well, I mean, here's the thing: they are best friends, and they are very close. And
Hmm.
yet, their respective spouses seriously have problems about that. I won't get into that anymore. That's a big part of the story. But I do think that's interesting. This whole idea of friendship versus, when does the friendship become something more? And clearly, their friendship was extremely close, and the fact that it did impact their marriages so intensely, it does kind of bring up this whole issue of can men and women get very close, have very close platonic relationships?
Right. I know. And can their spouses survive that friendship, right? I mean, I understand why spouses get jealous, especially having written this book. I just thought to myself, there's no way that they wouldn't, because the Benny and Joy's connection is just so strong. And probably they should have always been together, but the timing was an issue, and it's one of those things. And it was so much fun to write because I genuinely love a will they won't they romance. And I think everybody, probably can guess how it ends, but I think it's always so fun just to get there.
Actually, I was a bit surprised by the ending. I was.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
I
good.
was surprised by I thought it was going to go in a different direction. Maybe you didn't surprise others, but it did surprise me a bit about how everything ended up.
Oh, well, that I'm glad is a surprise. Yes, yes, yes.
But just maybe
There
that's
is.
just me, though. I don't know if I'm your normal reader or not.
I would like to believe that the average reader probably will not guess the what happens in the final chapter. Yeah.
Oh well, there are a lot. There are a lot of reveals in the, in the final chapter.
Yes.
Beyond that, the whole missing person thing and the whole situation, and the way you tell that story. I'm talking with Tiffany Crum. She's the author of the fiction novel "This Story Might Save Your Life." Today's episode of Larry in Fishers is brought to you by Citizens State Bank. For over 150 years, Citizens State Bank has been committed to the communities they're rooted in, providing more than just banking services and products, but a true community partner dedicated to giving back and supporting our community's growth. How? By making sure you and your local business owners have the products, tools, and expertise you need to thrive. In addition to everyday checking and savings accounts, Citizens State Bank offers a selection of business and personal financing products, plus a team of local experienced lenders who are as invested in your success as you are and committed to helping you secure the right financing for your needs. Skip the call centers and hold music and get the friendly hometown service you deserve, the modern digital banking tools you expect, and relationships that grow with you, whether you're running a business or managing everyday finances. You can visit Citizens State Bank's Fishers branch inside the Thomas A. Weaver Municipal Complex at 9 Municipal Drive, Suite 5, or learn about it more online. mycsbin.com/Larry. That's mycsbin.com/Larry. Thanks to Citizens State Bank, member FDIC and equal housing lender, for supporting local news and the Fishers community. We're back with Tiffany Crum talking about her book, This Story Might Save Your Life. When people finish your book, and let's say it's somebody chooses your book for a book club and the group
Hmm.
gets together, what would you like the conversation to be like?
Oh, well, I read really in my perfect world, the readers will be able to discuss all the ways the book delighted them, all the ways the book devastated them. And I really hope that at the end, after finishing the book, readers are also left with a sense of hope. And I think that there's a lot to be discussed about, having hope in human nature and in a world where, a lot of things feel like they're going wrong. I want people to feel satisfied with the ending of this book in a way that does make them feel like people are inherently good, and that maybe we have some, road bumps, but in the end we could get there if we try.
Well, I mean, they are. What I like about your book is these are imperfect people. We're all imperfect people.
Right.
Obviously, we're human, and so those imperfections. I mean, the good comes out, the imperfections come out, and it all comes out in the book. And you tell that story very well. But you kind of anticipated my next question, so I'll ask you to expand a little bit on what you've already said, because without spoiling anything, and I know you won't, uh, what message or feeling would you hope that the people reading this book will carry with them once they finish it?
Yeah, I mean, I really tried to show that yes, there are many facets to good people and many facets to bad people. Like the good people in my book have have things that probably anyone reading them just would want them to change, like we're all not perfect. And the people who do horrible things in my book also, started off in a place that were very, very likable. And I genuinely hope that people come across. I hope that people can see that I meant well for all of my characters, and that I wanted to to make the most human characters possible. And in the end, that, like I said before, most humans are inherently good.
One of my favorite characters, Betty and Joy are the main characters here, but one character I thought was fascinating was Mallory. Now,
Mm.
Mallory is the producer of their podcast. There's a family relationship there, but she becomes a very key person in this whole missing of joy story and where that goes. And how did you come up with Mallory? She was a very interesting part of the story.
How did I come up with Mallory? I think that I always knew that Xander had to have a sister,
And Xander, by the way,
and I
is the
knew,
husband of Joy, just so you know.
yes, Joy's husband, and Joy and Xander are the two characters who go missing at the very beginning of the book. And I knew that there had to be somebody who knew Xander more intimately than anyone else besides Joy, because she was the only one there that was left behind. And so I needed to have that inside scoop on his personality. And that was the reason that I created Mallory.
Well, and she does become a part of the story in other ways too. I think
Absolutely.
that's she and her spouse. It's a gay
Hmm.
marriage, and and she's also a part of the story. But I won't get into all the details there. And then speaking of characters, I mentioned a couple here. What characters, or one particular character that you created in this book to which you feel the closest?
Oh, I feel the closest to Joy. I wrote her as close to my personality as I possibly could get away with. so, so, so of course I like her. But I also, I always tell people if you like me, you'll like my book. If you don't like me, don't read my books.
Well, it's funny because I years ago when I worked in broadcast radio, I knew a fellow who wrote science fiction books, and he always told me that he some of his characters in the book were patterned after me, but I would never know it because he hid it. Now, how much did you hide yourself in Joy?
I mean, she has so much stuff going on in her life that's so different from my life that it ended up being easy enough to make her separate. But for example, she lives with narcolepsy, and I do not live with narcolepsy. And when I ended up deciding that she was going to have a sleep disorder, I had to do an extensive amount of research to make sure that I could portray it accurately and sensitively. It was probably the thing that I was the most concerned about. Although there are quite a few other triggering things in my book that I also agonized over, but the narcolepsy in particular, it was so important to me that she did not come across as a narcoleptic, but instead as a person who is funny and intelligent and hardworking, and who lives with the daily challenges of narcolepsy. And of course, that made her life very different from my own. But she and I have a very similar sense of humor.
Okay, that's good to know. The sense of humor does come straight through. And for those who maybe don't know, narcolepsy is seriously a serious issue where you fall asleep all the time. And
Hmm.
her dealing with that was no small thing. And I appreciated what you did in the acknowledgments about the research you did with those who do suffer with narcolepsy. And you did make an effort to make this medically correct. I appreciate
Oh,
that.
it was so important to me. There was no way that I was going to write narcolepsy in a way that it was a punchline. I wanted it to be a very thorough and sensitive portrayal of how it affects every facet of someone's life.
I love to ask this question of authors. I've been fortunate enough to interview a number of them in my various careers in the past. But I know sometimes publishers require you to give them everything, the story, the outline, the beginning, middle, and how it's going to end. You have to sometimes disclose that. I've talked to other authors who say, I'm writing the book and I just kind of tell the story as I go along, and I don't know how it's going to end until I finish the ending. How did you write this book?
Well, because this was my debut, I did have to finish the entire book before selling it to my publisher. And I also had to, I had to finish the entire book before getting an agent for it. This was my second agent that I got with this book. And we actually went through multiple revisions before we even went out on submission to publishers. So it was a pretty finished book by that point, but I still ended up doing a couple rounds of revisions with my editor as well. Editing is my life. I love editing. You have to pry a book out of my hands because it's just so satisfying to make sentences pretty. But as far as my next book, my option book, I can present just a few chapters and an outline for my next book. But I hate the idea of giving away the ending. I genuinely do. So I might ask my editor, hey, can I give you an open ended outline? Because I don't know that I want to know all the details at the end. I want to have fun finding them.
Well, it's nice that I find an author who says good things about editors. Not all writers do that.
I love editors. They're heroes.
Okay. Journalists don't always feel the same way about their editors, just so you know. I am curious, you've sort of hinted at this. As you wrote this book, what was your typical writing routine like?
Mm. Well, because I drafted it so quickly, I really had my butt in the chair for like 6 weeks straight. But on a typical day, generally, like when I'm working on a revision, I might sit down for the first few hours of the day after my kids leave for school. And then around lunch, I will take a break and take my dogs for a long walk. And I have two dogs that I attach to my waist, and one is on the right side, one is on the left. They know not to cross paths so that I don't have to deal with their leashes. And I'm holding my phone, and I am dictating ideas and or entire storyline. I might be doing the exposition all the way through the dialogue, beginning the chapter to the end, like a teleprompter in my mind. I can kind of see the words passing before my eyes. And when I get back to my desk, then I will transcribe it then, or I will keep it for the next morning so that I know what I'm going to work on. Because I think the most scary thing about writing is just facing a blank page. And if I never have to do that, if I never have to sit down and say, I don't know what I'm going to write today, then I'm a happy person.
So, are you one of these authors that wake up in the middle of the night and say, I got to write this down
Oh,
before
for
I
sure.
forget it?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes. And also, during conversations with my husband, because a lot of the banter that Benny and Joy have, it came from directly from conversations with my husband, because he's just darling and funny, and he'll say something and I will say, oh, I gotta go write that down.
Well, I'm glad that he was, so he's actually a sort of a collaborator on this book. Didn't get credit
Absolutely,
though.
absolutely. Yeah, he gave me some lines directly from his mouth.
Oh, so some of these Benny quotes are from him then.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Well, when you identify with Joy, I have to say Benny, maybe it's just because I'm a male, I did identify a little bit with Benny. I mean, he obviously was a good man with a checkered past, and he owned up to
yeah.
what he'd done wrong in the past, and didn't try to hide it or run away from it. I thought that was a good part of his character. And that brings me to the next question. I mean, when I read a book like yours, it's so intense and it's so detailed. Was there any part of this writing project for you? I know you've done writing before, but never quite like this. What was the most challenging part of writing this particular book?
I can tell you it's probably going to be the same thing that's the most challenging for every book that I write. I think the first chapter of a novel is so difficult to write. And it's because, especially with a book like mine that blends romance and mystery and humor, I think, the first chapter is what teaches you how to read a book, right? It's setting up the expectation for the rest of the chapters. And it's so hard for me to blend all three of those things in the one chapter. It's easy to blend them all in one book, but to blend them all in the one chapter to set that expectation correctly for the reader is very difficult. I
There's
rewrote
something.
that first chapter probably 30 times, maybe
Oh
100.
my.
I don't know.
Oh, well, that's really something and it's not unusual from what I have heard from other authors. It's interesting to me that you did a writing style that not all authors do, because what you do, and it really starts with the disappearance of Joy. You'll write in like the present tense of the story. Then you'll go back and go to something that Joy wrote months ago, go back to the current time period of the story, then go back again to what Joy had written in a memoir earlier. That's a very risky thing, I think, an author to do, but you did find a way to pull that off. How did you do that?
I think, it didn't feel risky to me at the time. It's so funny. Everyone likes to talk about the nonlinear narrative. And in my head, it's linear. I don't know if that makes any sense, but Benny's chapters are all in the present day, which are written in present tense, like you said, but they do go from day 0 to day 10. And Joy's chapters are all from the past, and they're all written in past tense, and they all go from 13 years ago until the present day. And so it was easy for me to keep all of that straight in my mind because I was just keeping the two stories straight from in a very linear, A to Z way. And I think, the most difficult part probably about blending the two was just to make sure that I didn't give any information away in Benny's chapters that hadn't already been revealed in Joy's chapters. So I had to be careful about how I was dropping the information, but otherwise, it seems so complicated, I think, from a reader's point of view, but it didn't feel complicated to write.
Okay, so it flowed easily in your own mind.
Yes.
So that made it easier for the reader because I don't think it was hard for the. Some people say it's very hard to read a book like that. I talked to my wife about that. She goes, "I have trouble reading books. I'm going to have her read your book, and I'm going to get her reaction
Oh,
once
yes.
she
Please
finishes."
let me know what she thinks.
I will. I will. And but I want to ask you this because now that your book's out there, how have the readers responded? What are you hearing from people who have read your book?
It has been so overwhelmingly positive. I'm just so grateful for the reader response. And there's just been so many early readers who posted reviews on Instagram and TikTok and just spreading the word. And I have been delighted and awed every single day of the past few months just by how many people are finding the book and requesting the book and now buying the book. And I found out this morning that I am a USA Today bestseller. And
Congratulations.
thank you
Yes.
so much. And I just could not be happier. My living my dream right now. And it's just such a wonderful thing to be able to share my book with the world.
Well, and you're going to share it with us. You're coming to Fishers,
Yes.
Indiana, suburb of Indianapolis, for people who don't know, on April the 18th from 6 until 8 p.m. Um, is there anything you particularly, not every author likes doing these kind of tours, but is there something that, others do, what is it you enjoy when you get a chance to meet readers, talk to them?
Oh, I love these events. I just finished the first week of my tour. I don't even know what day of the week it is. I woke up in a different hotel every day this week. But it was so much fun to be able to discuss this because you spend all of these months in your own head. And my poor husband, I just exhausted him with nonstop updates about Benny and Joy. How wonderful is it to go and be able to speak with people who are interested in hearing about the book, somebody who hasn't already heard every single story 100 times. So it was really fun. And everybody just they're so lovely. Book people are the best people. And I just had the most fun of my life. I never thought that I would love touring as much as I did. And now I can't wait to do it for every book.
Well, good. We're looking forward to having you here on April the 18th. By the way, we are recording on Wednesday, just so you know. Uh,
Thank you.
well, you've hinted at your next project. Can you tell us anything about what that story may be like?
It's still a little bit of a secret, but I can tell you that I am once again blending mystery and a romance and, my own special flair of literary fiction in mixed together. And it's a lot of fun to write. And also, tricky in its own ways, but I love the genre blend. I'm all for the thrills in my romance and the romance in my thrillers.
Well, you do. You mentioned in the acknowledgments about narcolepsy and doing the research on that, but yet, there's the police get involved here, and it's no secret that Benny becomes a suspect in Joy's disappearance and her husband's disappearance. So you have a couple of police officers that are part of the story. Did you have to do some research? Did you talk to police detectives? Did you do anything about what sorts of procedures they might use in a case like this?
Yeah, I more asked my lawyer friends who work in that type of law. That was my go-to for questions. But also, yeah, I mean, you have to read as many procedurals as you possibly can to understand even a little bit of it. But that was probably the trickiest research for me because it's something that I'm really unfamiliar with, and I definitely needed a lot of help from my friends.
Well, obviously, people talk about writing a fiction book is harder in some ways than writing a nonfiction book because you are writing about something, and there are many aspects of any fiction story that you may not be an expert in. So you do have to find out.
Absolutely.
So that's no small research challenge, is it?
No, and honestly, everything on the page is a little bit of research. I mean, if you want to look up what kind of tree they'd be passing as they're walking down the street, you want to make sure that the color of the leaves is the correct color for that time of year. I mean, there's so many things that you can get wrong, and it's wild in copy edits how many things can potentially be flagged. I mean, there were things that I had to prove. I swear that this is the name of this room that's in this building, like there are just so many details in any given book.
Well, the name of the book is "This Story Might Save Your Life." By the way, you're not planning on starting a podcast or anything, are you, Tiffany?
I'm not. I don't have enough time.
I was going to say the book is about. It starts off as a podcast, a very successful one, and spins into an interesting story about missing people and the investigations that go on there. And at the center of the story, again, a very close relationship between a man and a woman. Anything you would like to add before we wrap this up?
No, I just want to thank everyone for listening, and I want to thank all of the readers out there who have already found my book, and I'm just so grateful to everyone who has been so kind.
Well, it's very good. Thank you for giving us some of your time. I've certainly enjoyed our conversation, Tiffany, and good luck with This Story Might Save Your Life and with your next project.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.